And welcome. We are very excited to have our two guests today. Looking forward to talking to them for a while. It's Jim and Belinda Karahalios. This is a special edition of TNT Live, as we usually do one a week. But hey, for this, we're going to do two. So Jim and Belinda started the New Blue Party of Ontario, which is the only real alternative to the amalgamation of NDP through Liberal through whatever Doug Ford is parties. And Jim was unceremoniously kicked out of the Conservative Party leadership race for being conservative. You founded Axe the Carbon Tax. And Belinda is the first and only person to vote against Bill 195, which is the Orwellian named Reopening Ontario Act, which is the act, if you're wondering, that keeps Ontario closed. It also basically turns Doug Ford into the Supreme Leader of Ontario. So, Jim, Belinda, thank you so much for coming us and tell the people a little bit about the New Blue Party and what you guys have been working on the last few years.
Well, thank you for having us. This is my first time, which is kind of exciting. So hello, and thank you. And happy 2-year anniversary to 2 weeks to flatten the curve. It was today, 2 years ago today.
Sad anniversary.
Yeah. I know, isn't it? It's just... but yeah, big things happening with New Blue Party of Ontario. And I just want to clarify one thing. So the Reopening Ontario Act, I was the only former or current PC MPP who voted against it. So the NDP did vote against the Reopening Ontario Act, which I've been calling the ROA because it makes it a lot easier. And that's kind of what's been trending on social media as well, the ROA. So yeah, just wanted to include that. But yeah, New Blue Party of Ontario is really trucking along. We've got 112 candidates to date. We started, the name was reserved and announced in October of 2020. We were officially registered like a real registered party as of January 2021. So we're over a year old. And oh my gosh, so much has happened since then. Like it's so much work and nobody talks about that. Everyone thinks it's just like, oh, you're starting a party. It's not like that. Especially when you got, Jim and the amazing volunteers that we have, our great board. And, we've got a constitution. We've got riding associations across the province. We've got how many total riding associations?
We're at 114.
114, like in our first year. That's incredible. Like we're doing very well. I'm gonna pass it over to you.
Yeah, we've been chugging along every day, guys, and it hasn't stopped since the last time we were on the show. And it's good to see Daniel co-hosting this time, and Wyatt is doing incredible work. Wyatt's doing some great articles and reporting the stuff that the mainstream media doesn't want to report, like the fact that MPP Belinda Karahalios is the only one at Queen's Park, guys, consistently exposing and challenging the left-wing establishment parties and their nonsense ideas at Queen's Park, from that lockdown bill. You call it the ROA, I like to call it the lockdown bill. And right up until critical race theory just a couple weeks ago, and every day in between, we've been hard at it for a year and a half now. Mm-hmm. And 12 more ridings to find candidates, and we're getting ready for the next election.
Well, yeah, so let's talk a bit about Bill 67, the critical race theory bill, because you're the only one who voted against it. It was so confusing for some other people, the Ontario Party MPP, who looked at equity in the title and just couldn't figure out what it was about. I have sent him a Hooked on Phonics for MPs, so that will be arriving in the mail. It has pictures and everything, so I'm sure he'll be able to read it third time through. But just tell us a little, because you guys, from what I understand, you guys are planning on using the stopwoke.ca petition, which is started by someone else to sort of circumvent the bill. So, Belinda, you're the only one in Parliament actually fighting against this. Mm. How does, break it down for the people when something crazy like Bill 67 comes out, which wants to have every teacher, if they're going to teach your children, be made sure that they fit some sort of anti-racist qualifications. How do you make sure that how do you stop this bill? Like, what's the process you're going through to fight, let's say, woke nonsense?
Well, so I'm going to get to that, but first I just want to make it clear for everyone that's watching right now. So when you have a government putting a bill forward, sometimes when you're in opposition, which is what I am in, because I'm not part of the government anymore, I got kicked out for voting against the ROA in July of 2020. When you're in opposition and the government tables a bill, you get like a day to read the bill. And the bill could be 40, 50 pages long. This bill, Bill 67, is a 6-page bill that was tabled in December. So we had from December until March 3rd or 4th that we voted on it to read the bill. And this 6-page bill that someone with a grade 5 education could very easily read and understand. In the preamble, it even talks about subconscious racism. I mean, so even if you just read those couple paragraphs, it's very clear this bill is going to do nothing to actually fight racism. Very, very clear. So when I see excuses being made for others for who voted in favor, when I see apologies being flung out for people who voted in favor, it's nonsense to me. There are no excuses. You are either in favor of the bill or you are not in favor of the bill. And I was very clear by standing up and voting on my own and saying that, no, I'm not in favor of this bill. And you know what? We've had a lot of support, people saying like, thank you for being the only one, the only voice of reason, because it seems like everyone's just this groupthink mentality is happening in the Ontario legislature. And, you know, I'm lucky that I've got such a great team behind me because I have a lot of support, and it looks like across the province, there's a lot of support as well. Now, going back to your question, so stopwoke.ca, really grateful for the woman who started this and started the petition. It has picked up a lot of steam, and I will be reading it into the legislature. The House resumes on Monday at 9 a.m., and we are able to read petitions on Mondays starting at 1:30 p.m., depending on proceedings, because that can change. But the reason why it's important is because of a number of things. One, we have an election, like it's around the corner, June 2nd, right?
Yeah.
That's the biggest piece of the pie here. The second one is that when you have the number of people that we already currently have signed onto this, and that number is very quickly growing hour by hour, day by day. When you have that quantity of people putting their pen to paper and saying they disagree with something, that government, if they want their seats, they're going to pay attention. And so we need to be quick about this because it is currently sitting at the Social Policy Committee. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say I put the link to the bill in the chat below. So that's if you're looking for it, it's stopwoke.ca, and if you can't type for some reason because all you have is a mouse, you can click something in the chat, and it's a pretty simplified petition to sign. And they don't ask you, like, there's sometimes people ask you do a petition, you're like, okay, this is a email list phishing scam. This is not one of those. So it's pretty good. Do you have the numbers on how many people have signed it so far?
I don't have those.
It's in the thousands,
yeah,
and we're really grateful to support. We had a couple parents come to us and say, hey, this is an issue. We don't have any MPPs or any people in politics, even advocacy groups getting back to them. And we were happy to help them promote it. And right away on the first day on Monday morning, when we put it out, thousands of people visiting the website, signing up, really was overwhelming, actually. Because Ontarians care. And as much as the establishment parties tried to sneak this bill through second reading and didn't want to report about it, and they kind of chuckled at Belinda. Belinda told me the MPPs chuckled at her, laughed at her when she voted against it, thinking, wow, she really made a big mistake. The way you challenge, out of touch politicians in 3 political parties and an independent thrown in the mix is you get right to the voters and you allow the voters to express themselves and tell the politicians where they should really be at on this stuff.
The funny thing, too, is that the fact that they chuckled at Belinda for voting against this very obviously terrible bill demonstrates they think they know what's in the bill. They think it's foolhardy for you to be against this and, oh, you're going to get ripped apart in the media for, standing for parents. And it sort of just shows how kind of incompetent a lot of Ontario politicians are, that they think that they can kind of just wrong. Yeah, like they think they can wrong the parents in Ontario, and it's not going to come back to bite them. Like we've seen this even in San Francisco. If you push parents too far, you could get thrown out of office in San Francisco. And like Ontario might not be like exactly like Texas, but parents here are going to be much more conservative than even in San Francisco, and they're throwing their own school board members out for pushing CRT in the classroom.
So to me, this is a symptom of our arch nemesis at this show. If you don't know, we have a nemesis here. It's the polling companies, who clearly, this was framed to the MPs in some way of like, oh, we're gonna do a study saying, Canadians, do you think racism is bad? 99% of people, yes, racism is bad. Do you like bills to stop racism? Oh yeah, okay, this is a bill to stop racism. Therefore, everyone supports it. without actually going to like what's in the bill. Like, do you like they never poll? Do you support every teacher being forced to take anti-racism training before teaching kids? Then people go, wait, what? Do you believe that implicit bias tests, which have been disproven, like that this is the thing the conservatives never do, is they use the left-wing framing of the thing. Like, do you believe in stopping racism? Well, Bill C-67 is a stop racism bill. Oh, I like that, without knowing what's in it. So to me, this is a symptom of, conservatives getting, hoisted by their own petard and doing stupid polls again.
Maybe. I mean, look, the flip side of it, though, is that the polling companies are just responding to the parties. Parties are usually promoting these polls, right? And, I don't know what poll would come out in the majority if you polled parents and said, how do you guys feel about fining students or parents or anyone who interrupts a proceeding or a classroom with what we're going to classify later? We're not going to classify it in the bill, but later we're going to classify as subconscious racism. I don't think that you get a majority of Ontario parents signing up for that. I don't think the majority of people are going to say, yeah, I agree, there should be a law against subconscious actions or words that are geared towards subconscious racism. So I think you're partly right, but I think the fact that no one wants to talk about what's in the bill is what's really nefarious and what's going on. And I think the greater, I don't know if you call it the system or the root cause, is you got a bunch of politicians at Queen's Park and they don't really have much of a stomach or a backbone to do the job that they've been sent to do. And that's to maybe get attacked by the media every once in a while, maybe get criticized, maybe, stand out, maybe take a stand and not just do what's easy.
But
so I'm going to bring up 2 questions from the chat. This is the first yes or no one. People know, is there a candidate for Cornwall?
We're 12 candidates short, so you can look at the ridings where we still need 12 candidates. And yes, there's a candidate in Cornwall.
Okay, there you go. There you go, my Cornwall people. And then people want to know if this is an Ontario bill or is it national? So it is
the province of Ontario. It's within the Ontario legislature, so it would just be Ontario. I'm a provincial elected representative. I don't deal with the federal stuff. I'm not in Ottawa.
And but the danger is that a lot of stuff that we've seen the Trudeau Liberals do was started by McGuinty or Kathleen Wynne in the Ontario legislature.
Oh, like the windmills and the energy stuff, and that all the people who didn't end up going to jail for the gas plant stuff, they all went into the federal government. And so to avoid a 25-minute rant about me yelling about windmills, which will happen if we keep going, we'll let you go back to what you were talking about.
So just for the one comment. So one really easy way to know if it's a federal bill is if there's a letter in front of it. So if there's a C or an S, then it's going to be in the federal realm. In Ontario, we just have like bill and then number. So just to make things easier. Now, what I was going to say is that another problem we have is that a lot of MPPs, not just PC MPPs, but a lot of PC MPPs, they're so comfy cozy in their job that they don't really have to try anymore, and they don't, because they know that whatever they do, they're going to win, and so they're kind of cocky about it, right? And that's why they'll sit in their seats in their minister's chair and guffaw when I take when I have the guts to stand up against a bad bill and be the only one and vote no. This is what they do. They're comfortable. And so they really don't try. And it's unfortunate, right? Because at the end of the day, they're a public servant. I'm a public servant, and you are there to serve, and you're only there 4 years at a time. And it's amazing how some of these guys get back in, term after term. I'm not going to name any names, but it really is incredible.
Well, for a long
I'll
time,
name all the bad ones. It's all of them.
Well, for a long time, the PC party has said, for far too long, they've said, it doesn't really matter how far to the left we go because Ontarians don't have anyone else to vote for, and conservatives or anti-liberals, anti-socialists don't have anyone else to vote for. So they're just going to vote for us. And we know we suck. We know we lose most of the time, but we're just going to keep going until eventually we get an election. And they got one last time because of 2 reasons: because of Axe the carbon tax, and because Rob Ford's brother was running as leader of the Ontario PC party. And you could see what they do while they're in government. They don't care about principles. They don't have any principles. They're actually leftists controlled by lobbyists, and the politicians in the PC party put together by Patrick Brown and Doug Ford. And now Doug Ford just picks them all. They don't even have elections. They don't care. They're leftists and they're establishment progressives. And they agree with this bill, like they agree with the lockdowns, and they agree with the carbon tax, and they agree with every Justin Trudeau Liberal idea, because the Ontario PC Party is a wing of the Justin Trudeau Liberal Party of Canada.
Oh, here's just another aspect maybe about the stopwoke.ca petition that you guys are kind of putting together with that. I forgot what her name is, who started the petition. Can you remind me?
Catherine Cronis.
Oh, okay, there you go. But the petition is also going after the sex ed curriculum that the PCs promised to get rid of, and they kind of pretended like they were about to get rid of, and then at the last moment they kept it in, but the media still went after them as if they were real conservatives who were standing up to it. So that's another thing that people don't really remember, never got changed, is that the radical sex ed curriculum is still around.
Yeah,
I think people remember why. People remember why.
But the thing is, I remember going to the briefing at 7:30 in the morning, driving from Cambridge. Like I left at like 5:30, something crazy like that, just to get the sneak peek. This is when I was still in the PC party, and I remember that there was like a chart, like what it was and what it is, and there was nothing different about it. But then but we have the exemption paper, we need the parental consent, and then you find out that if in one part of the day that hasn't been deemed as like sex education day, a kid raises their hand and asks a question about one of those topics, the teacher can address it, and your opt-out that you signed as a parent doesn't apply to that. It applies to the day that's carved out as sex ed day. So it's very it's just so typical. It's just so like what they do, right? It's just the way they do things, and it's such a giant disappointment. And now I know why we call them the PC party and not the progressive conservatives, because there's nothing conservative about them. So just get the word out of the name entirely, please.
So here's a question from our Bitcoin columnist, from Neil. He wants to know what you guys think about Bitcoin.
Well, decentralized finance is a good idea, and it's been a shame that, watching the Ontario government not make it easier for innovative technologies and Bitcoin, it's a shame. So I'm no Bitcoin expert, so Neil, you got to buy a membership in the New Blue Party, and, become our Bitcoin policy guy, and decentralization is a good thing.
I think that also highlights the issue, too, that you guys have been having with the Ontario government, because I think that with the issues that we're currently talking about on the podcast and the ones you guys have talked about in other instances, is that people are thinking, well, is the New Blue Party just something for social conservative? It's only for people who care about Bill 67 and want to scrap the sex ed curriculum and all these other sorts of things, who want to get rid of sort of speech codes and whatnot. But it's the Ontario government's been pretty bad when it comes to promoting bringing in business into the province, or even just keeping businesses from going out west or going to the US. And maybe you guys want to talk about something about, especially just the spending. I think that the spending was kind of incredible, just how much they were spending even before the pandemic, despite being the sort of party running on tax cuts and making sure that to clean up like wasteful spending. And
I'll touch on it quickly and then throw it back over to you, because I can see that you got some answers. But we've mentioned that. So in budget debate, in past budget debates, I've mentioned how the Ontario PC party is spending more than the Liberal government pre-COVID. Like, they're spending more money, and it's not. The last 2 years have been very COVID centric, right? But they've used this to slip things in, and we're paying attention to it. So, for example, there was a bill at the end of 2020, October, November, and it was an omnibus bill tabled by Pragmatic Sarkaria, and it had in there that a code of conduct for those who conduct marriages, marriage officiants. And they wanted this code of conduct to be determined by the minister, and they could take away your marriage license if you didn't follow this code of conduct. And I remember reading it, and just the more you read these PC party bills, the more it just kind of blows your mind. Like, who is writing this stuff? Like, when I read the Reopening Ontario Act 195, and I remember bringing it to Jim because it was so outrageous, and I was like, you have to read this, right? Because Jim's a lawyer. And so the more you read these bills, you really do a deep dive and do the cross-referencing, it's just such a mess. So this marriage, they had the marriage code of conduct. We blew the whistle on that. Ontarians, they did what they do best, which is they were loud about it. They emailed, they called, and sure enough, it got removed at committee after a second reading debate. They removed that schedule out of committee. And it's just one thing after the next with this government. And it is not just, the COVID related things. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just say, I remember once before COVID, when I was working at Tech TV, a PC MP came in the first year to do an interview like while I was working on my shows with the show before me. And she gets on and she starts saying, well, you know, we've been attacked by the thing about we're cutting spending. That's not true. We've actually increased spending. And I'm like,
Oh,
what are you talking? How do you increase Kathleen Wynne spending? How do you like? And what's this going on? Like, I was just pacing back and forth with the thing. Like, what are you talking about right now? We elected you to reduce spending because Kathleen Wynne spent $40 billion a day on like nothing, and somehow you increase spending. And this is pre-COVID, so yeah, it just drove me nuts. There's such high hopes for Doug Ford because he like came in and everyone hated him, which was nice, and he was like, "Oh, well, I'm going to be conservative," and you're like, it can't be worse than Patrick Brown. There's no way this can be worse than Patrick Brown. And then he's like getting in, he's like, you know what? I'm going to try and be worse than Patrick Brown. And you're like, how?
He's like the Seinfeld episode with the guy that's like, love me, everybody love me with the fur coat. That's what he reminds me of. Seinfeld.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's absolutely bananas how he got in, and then they started bragging about how much they were spending. And you're just like, how? Ontario was broke. Kathleen, we were broke under the Liberals. We don't have money. And now you've increased the budget. And then COVID. So hyperinflation, whoop-de-doo.
Yeah, they started the real betrayal of the PC party that everyone noticed was when they embraced the carbon tax, right? And we were on that with Axe the carbon tax. And, you know, they always used to hold out, you know, we're not really solid on a lot of other bills. And, but, you know, you can count on us for the economy and getting our fiscal house in order. That's kind of what, you know, the brand of the PCs was. We're a mess on everything else, but you can count on us on the economy. Well, not so much. They flip-flopped on the carbon tax a couple times. They got rid of cap and trade, and a few months later, the Ford PCs brought in an industrial carbon tax, and they cut a deal with Trudeau on a carbon tax before the Supreme Court even ruled on that carbon tax case. And they voluntarily brought in an industrial carbon tax. And, you know, an entire registry where business now has to report to the government their greenhouse gas emissions, very, very costly added regulations. That's one. The other one is, you know, we were supposed to have an explosion of the economy when Doug Ford won. And all of his budget projections are what, 1.25% growth every year. We got to get back to 3, 4, 5% growth of the economy. That's what we're going to unveil in the new blueprint. And Belinda's asking them these questions. And then the third one on the economy is the fact that they promised they were going to reduce hydro rates. And the core issue, the fundamental building block of why our economy in Ontario has been suffering for 2 decades is because of these wind turbines driving up electricity rates. 5% of our grid, give or take, it's been a while since I looked, but it was 5% of our grid made up of wind energy. The majority of that is dumped into the US for pennies on the dollar, while we're paying 50 to 85 cents a kilowatt hour, and we're selling it for 1 or 2 cents to the US because wind is producing at a time when we don't need it. And it's making up for at least 25% of our hydro bill, which is driving business out of Ontario, driving manufacturing out of Ontario. Wouldn't it be great? We got a microchip issue globally around the world, but unfortunately, Ontario is not a manufacturing hub. We're not bringing in manufacturing and growing manufacturing because we've destroyed our economy with hydro rates. Ford PCs we're going to solve that. They didn't. Hydro rates keep going up, and all they've done is adopted the wind model, which is just subsidizing the hydro bill. So either from the ratepayer or the taxpayer, we're still footing the bill for explosive hydro rates. And then the one last thing, Daniel, don't lose control here, but they're putting in the biggest wind farm operation.
Oh God.
In Ontario's history.
Okay.
Approved
Get me my windmill destroying axe.
Eastern Ontario. Eastern Ontario. It's really sad. The residents there, you know, that thing could have been canceled by the Ford PCs. They could have passed legislation, but under their watch, construction started on the largest wind farm in Ontario. Not under the wind watch, under Doug Ford and the PC's watch.
Okay, we have to do it. Wind is stupid. It's just stupid. Every kilowatt hour stored, you need another kilowatt hour of natural gas just to store that thing. We don't have the battery. We over-subsidize it at a crazy rate because it's green. But like, it's the only thing keeping Chinese coal alive is the stupid windmills, which like cost so much carbon, whatever, to make the greenhouse gas, whatever footprint we want to, whatever Klaus Schwab's metric is, the metric to just create that thing, it won't pay it back before it degrades in 20 years. Then it just becomes a toxic nothing there. The only reason we still have like friggin' coal is to build the windmills and the solar panels, which is just driving me nuts. They cost X amount of dollars. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. They're bad for the environment. They're bad for the economy. Okay, so before I explode, we'll just say the carbon tax this is like the red line for any conservative. This is Patrick Brown, Jean Charest, Aaron O'Toole, like everyone flip-flops on this. I don't understand how we can't do this. This is not like, you don't need to be like part of some fancy university economics. It's like, this is day 2 of 11th grade economics. It's day 2. There are elastic goods and inelastic goods. A video game is elastic, which means if the price increases a lot, people won't buy it. You're not buying a video game for $400. Gas, food, oil, these are inelastic goods, which means when the price increases, people still need to buy it. These people still need to go from point A to point B. So you can't reduce the amount of carbon footprint by adding in a gas tax, because people still need to put gas in their car to go from point A to point B. We still need trucks and trains to get things from point A to point B. We still need to grow food. So this fantasy that we can sort of cut greenhouse gas emissions by just taxing gas and just making it so crazy expensive. Like,
effectively, the argument is that we're going to tax the parents of children into riding a bike to a job closer to their home and having to quit their like good paying job because they can't drive there anymore. Like the actual way that you get people to stop using gas is essentially bankrupting them to the point where they have to just stay home all the time.
Yeah, that's essentially what it is. So yeah, if any conservative can't stand against this, and this is the thing, is like, and it's always framed every time I see polls, it's like, do you support the Liberals' policy to improve the environment? And people go like, oh, I like the environment, but no one explains it. Like, do you like the whenever it's framed, do you want more tax on gas? Everyone's like, no, I don't want that. Do you want the magical tree environment plan? Oh, yay, magic trees. That's for me. So yeah, this drives me nuts. So I'll let you guys talk before I die of an aneurysm. And guys, please like, share. I know Facebook might be messing with the comments, but if you can like the thing and share it, it really helps us go, especially when we're doing it. So push the buttons. And if you don't push the buttons, the Doug Ford will build a windmill in your house, in your backyard. And then I will come there screaming in the night, trying to knock it down. So you'll never sleep again.
Oh, I hope Mike Schreiner watches this. Sorry, leader of the Green Party, really nice guy. We sit very close to each other on the opposite side of the house.
But still, windmill's stupid.
Just to jump into it, just because we were just bringing up polling a second ago, what sort of like you guys have been sort of getting a little bit ignored by the polling companies recently when it comes to actually getting New Blue on a proper poll where they're actually trying to gauge people's interests. It's only like Ledger who's actually being kind of fair to you guys, and all the other ones are popping up with these kind of fantasy polls where like, well, what was if Roman Baber was running a party, or what would you do if like would you vote for a party that Randy Hillier is running that hasn't been registered yet? Oh, yeah, sure. And it's like every single poll they include you guys in. It seems like they're watering it down as if they're not wanting you guys to make it to the debate or something like that. And what do you guys sort of think is going on with all the sort of weirdness with the polling companies?
Well, the polls don't really matter at this point, and most of the polls are funded by the parties, the establishment parties themselves, where they got a nice little taxpayer subsidy in the millions. So they got lots of money to pay operatives in the back and hire polling companies. So, you know, what's a poll going to tell you 3, 4, 5, 6 months before election day? Like nothing. The vote is going to be happening on June 2nd, and that's the poll that's going to matter. And so a poll for us, what are they going to say? Oh, it's a new party, and they're running up against two parties that have brands over 100 years, and more Ontarians know those two parties than the New Blue. Oh, no kidding. I don't need to pay a pollster to tell me that. And the establishment parties are going to pay their pollsters to get kind of what they want out of the polling number. And it's all based on the questions they're asking. So we don't put any emphasis on the polls. Yeah, there have been a couple of those. I don't even know if they were real polls or Twitter polls or whatever, trying to distract with Randy Hillier's going to do a party. Roman Baber's going to do a party. Everyone's doing a party after the New Blue was formed. But those are more distraction techniques to kind of make it look like there's all these parties springing up. There's really not. There's the New Blue Party, and it's a new party. It's a year and a half old, and we're getting ready to run a full slate. We're 12 short. We got thousands of members and donors, and the new blueprint is amazing. People are going to love it, and it's going to come out soon, and that's the only party. So they want to make it look like the other parties want to make it look like there's many other parties forming on the right and fractioning the vote, and it's not really the case.
No, we're the only party on the right.
Yeah,
pretty much. We're the only.
I mean, people have talked about Derek. Well, Derek Sloan didn't form a party. He took over a previously dead Ontario party. So this is the other one that's sort of propped up, and you know, it was this. But of course, the Ontario party, which is going to fight critical race theory, voted for critical race theory. So you have sort of this. I mean, this is the Derek Sloan. Like, this is just frustrating with Derek Sloan's. Derek Sloan's doing the thing where it's like, guys, I want to work with everyone. What we're going to do is we're going to form 57 different parties, and we're all going to work together to make sure none of us get any brand recognition. And then like we're going to run candidates and different things, and we're going to look at the stars, and whatever star chart says, that's what party's going to run in this thing. And it's like it's the dumbest plan I've ever heard. But what's it like? What's it like to one, start a party, and then two, to see like parties. How do you deal with parties that have just specifically kind of been brought up to mess with you guys, in my opinion? But that's the thing, is like, what is it like dealing with, the fake conservative rebels? I don't even know what to call them here, but
I'm going to have to go. So Jim's going to take over from here. And
why don't you tell them what it was like building the party, and then you can
okay, and then I got to
get to your 8 o'clock.
Belinda had to go, so it's not like we scared her away, but Belinda,
No, it's an 8 o'clock.
It's 8 o'clock, and I'm like,
but tell them how it's like building the party.
It's a lot of work. Like, this isn't a walk in the park. It's there's the name registration, which really anybody can register a name, as long you have to follow certain rules. It can't sound or like another party, and the new rules say you can't have the same provincial name as a federal name. So they've got the grandfathered ones, but it can't happen now. But then once your name is registered, once you get that registered name, to actually become a registered party, you need to have 1,000 signatures from Ontario voters, people who are eligible to vote in the province of Ontario, sign off on that. And we announced it on the Thanksgiving long weekend of 2020, October 2020, and we received, close to almost 2,000 in a week it was.
Couple weeks.
I mean, it was just incredible. And then so we submit all the paperwork. Elections Ontario does their background. They call people, make sure they're real people. And then we became officially registered, like I mentioned at the beginning of this, in January. And so once that happens, so now you're a registered party. You've got to follow all the Elections Ontario rules. And then if you want to do it right, then you need to actually build your foundation, which is, you've got a constitution. You have a statement of principles. We've got our website, which is basically what our social media. We have an executive. We have riding associations. There's so much more to it than just the name of a party and a party leader. It's almost embarrassing when I look at the Ontario party and they're like, we're a party. We're real. Yeah. Okay. You've got what? 2 riding associations? Your leader's not even running. And, your only MPP that's sitting couldn't even vote the right way on an issue that you claim to be so strong about. Give me a break. So, before I get into that, because you've asked me to talk about the party building, yes, it's a lot of work. When it's done right, it is a lot of work, and we've put in tons of work. And it's Jim, it's our team, it's myself. But we have that strong foundation, and because of that, we've got this machine now that's ready to go for the June 2 election.
Oh, and to win an election too.
For being with us. I know you guys have to go. I'll let you go, but thanks for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Jim's staying, so just Belinda has to go.
Just me.
But thanks for voting against Bill 195. Thanks for bringing all this to light. You're doing great work, and thanks for coming on. You're welcome back anytime.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Well, yeah, we'll let Jim resort his office space there a little bit so he can get the center of the frame.
You can post the Give, Send, Go, and I'll do the I'll do the commercial for National Telegraph. Guys, do you like the National Telegraph? Well, you're here, so you have to. And if you don't, Doug Ford's going to get you. Just letting you guys know, we are going to Bitcoin Miami to cover the conference there. It's an expensive conference, and the reason we're doing it is, as again, I was on the ground in Ottawa, and what I saw is the Bitcoin that was raised of 1.2 million, that actually got to the truckers. I know they've written articles that it was frozen and all this, but it's kind of like they just declared it to be frozen. It wasn't really frozen. So what I saw there is Bitcoin seems to work at getting around the government. So with digital ID coming, digital currencies, central banking, World Economic Forum, all this nonsense, Bitcoin is going to be a major frontier in fighting whatever globalist financial nonsense we're going to. So Wyatt and I don't know a lot about Bitcoin. We're trying to learn. We brought Neil on, who knows a lot more about Bitcoin, but we think this is a really, really, really important thing to learn about. So next month we will be going to Miami to cover Bitcoin Miami. So to learn about Bitcoin, 2, to do interviews there. We hope to interview Jordan Peterson and all this other stuff. But also we do want to do some mini documentaries of we're going to Florida to sort of show what it's like in the free state of Florida versus Canada. So we want to do a lot of content there. So if you guys are looking to support independent media, you want to support the National Telegraph, you can go to the Give, Send, Go and help fund us.
Yeah,
just
pitch in $5 or something, and we'll also be able to do some live podcasts from Miami Beach and everything like that. So it won't just be this sort of setup all the time. We'll be able to get some really good quality footage on the ground. It was great to see you back, Jim. So maybe if you want to kind of carry on to going on what Belinda was talking about in terms of the setup of the party, not to belabor it too much, but I just think that what a lot of these sort of new parties that are popping up are kind of doing, and what the media is doing by talking about them and pretending like they're a legit party like any other. And I even believe that the Ontario First Party is still technically around as the Ontario Populist Party, now being run by Mark Emery. They take advantage of people not knowing how campaigning works, that to actually win a riding, you can't just be posting on social media and hoping that you get so much momentum you win. You need people on the ground leafleting, talking to people, holding little small meet and greets with people who have concerns like months before the election. You can't just sort of do this thing where you fly in 2 weeks before and hope that you're going to have so much momentum because you hit the ground running and you posted a lot of stuff on Facebook. You actually do need to put in some effort.
Well, in one way, it's registering a party shouldn't be very hard. We like to say, it takes a lot of work to build a party, and that's true. In the sense that you want to have riding associations in every riding, and we're not even there yet. We're like 9-10 ridings short of 124, and you want to run candidates in every riding, and we're really close. And we've been at it for a year and a half, and we're building a party where other parties have been around for decades. Even the Green Party has been around for decades, right? And we're proud that in the year and a half, we have a really good team behind us, a board, and hundreds of people, local leaders in every riding. And we're at the point where we're right behind the 4 establishment parties in terms of number of riding associations registered, 5th in membership, 5th in donations. The other party that exists, that has existed in Canadian politics for a long time, is the Libertarian Party, right, of Ontario. And, they run about 20 to 30 candidates in every election. They haven't been able to run a full slate before, but they have brand recognition. So they're really like, if we're going to talk about another party, it's the Libertarian Party, and they've got some positions that we agree with, but other policy positions, they don't agree with, or we couldn't find simpatico with their other positions. So we started a new party, and the New Blue Party, because we wanted to create a comprehensive alternative that runs a candidate in every riding, and it's a long-term project for us. It's not just a one election cycle project. Now, we give a lot of oxygen to the other parties. And, some of those that Wyatt mentioned are just parties. They're not parties. They're just reserved party names at Elections Ontario. And there's some actors that pitch a website and they say we're a political party, and you're not. You're not a political party. You just got your name reserved at Elections Ontario. You don't have the, registrants, the endorsement signatures in place, and you haven't filed the paperwork and all that. Then there's other parties like Daniel was talking about. You said that party was dead and it was resurrected. Well, you got to be alive before you're dead. And, having a registered party with paperwork, it's a paper party. And you've been around for 2 or 3 years and you ran 2 or 3 candidates. I don't know. Is that a political party? I guess in the sense that it's registered in Elections Ontario, it is on paper a political party. And it shouldn't be hard to register a political party in a democracy. And the lefties want to make it really hard with all this paperwork and so on and so forth. But what the measure of a political party is, how many candidates are you running? Do you have members? Do you have riding associations? And that's what we've been working really hard on that Belinda was talking about.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up this in the chat, and I'll answer this one. People are asking, what's for people on the fence between New Blue and the PPC? Well, actually, the New Blue is provincial, and the PPC is federal.
I think she's asking me, though.
Yeah, but I mean, just Belinda went over it. Also, you can't. There's a stupid law in Canada. Like, the PPC can't create an Ontario PPC, right? You're not allowed to do that, from what I understand.
Well, the problem is there's already a party that was closely named, like the People's Something Party of Ontario, and it was run by some guy in Toronto or whatever, who's kind of like a bit of a hippie. And I believe Maxime Bernier or whoever, someone tried to reserve the name in Ontario and they wouldn't budge. So then they tried a few different alternative names and they got rejected several times and whatnot.
Okay.
Yeah. And the history, look, when when Belinda got removed from the PC caucus and The two of us and 18 others got kicked out of the Cambridge PC Riding Association. Belinda had to make a decision. Was she going to stay in politics or not? Was she going to run again or not? Was she going to finish her term? And she took a couple of weeks, and we heard from people, not only our team, but supporters across Ontario said, keep going. And we also heard from PPC voters, and they said we need an alternative provincially, because not enough to just have an alternative federally. And the situation's worse provincially, because as bad as the Conservative Party of Canada has been at stages with O'Toole as leader, the Ontario PC Party makes the Conservative Party of Canada look like a functioning party in comparison. Like, at least the CPC goes through the motions, has a leadership, has some nominations, and they dispatch Aaron O'Toole as quickly as they could. The Ontario PC Party is just a shell of a party. So we sat down, and there's a bit of history there. If you guys want to hear it, we got some time. And we had different meetings with different groups. And one of the meetings was with some PPC candidates from 2019. And they made it very clear to us, don't name it the PPC Party of Ontario or whatever nonsense, number one, because it's got to be its own distinct brand provincially. And secondly, you can't name it that, because others tried to name it People's Party of Ontario. And like you guys said, there was a Kevin Clark out in Toronto who had registered the name. There was a whole Star article on it. One of the reporters of the Star wrote up about it. And we thought we had some kind of, good for you kind of thumbs up from the PPC headquarters to start the New Blue. And we weren't infringing on their brand or trying to piggyback on it. Well, I'm in the hospital in March of 2021, a couple months after we've been registered, chugging along. Max Bernier calls me to run for them after I get out of the hospital. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks because of a 12-hour surgery for the tumor I had in my leg, the bone cancer. I was halfway through 3 rounds of chemo. It was my second surgery. I get home, and they asked me to run federal. I said, guys, I'm still learning how to walk again, and we're building the provincial party. And it turns out, like 2 or 3 months ago, this article comes out in the Star that while I'm in the hospital, these guys are trying to broker a deal and bribe a guy who has the name People's Party, People's Progressive Party, I'm not even sure the name they have in Elections Ontario, to hand the name over to them so they could register some kind of provincial version that looks or sounds like the federal PPC party. So much for sticking to a deal or sticking to your commitment. Ultimately, Daniel's right. There's no PPC provincial wing. Provincial and federal parties are different legal entities. It's easy to get confused because there's an NDP provincially, NDP federally, same with the Conservatives, same with the Liberals. But the PC party is the PC party, and the Conservative Party is the Conservative Party of Canada, and they're different. And we've seen that the Doug Ford PC party is trying to be the wing of Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party and cozy up to him. And we're trying to be the alternative to that. And we have support, not just among PPC voters. We got support among people that vote Conservative federally, Liberals, NDPers, people that are opening their eyes and saying, maybe I do have opinions that don't fit with these establishment parties. Maybe I'm against voter fraud and hydro ripoffs, and I want to see lower taxes and balanced budget. And I don't like these lockdown bills and mandates and people losing their jobs and losing their educations. So we're sticking to our principles. We're not watering it down. And we're the New Blue Party of Ontario, and we're in it for the long term.
No, I really like that you said it, because one of my questions was going to be like, hey, what happens after the election? And when you form all these EDAs and the riding associations, this is the key. Like, this is a signal to me that this is serious. Whereas when you're a party with 2 riding associations and you're running the candidates, like I would be willing to put good money that Derek Sloan drops the Ontario party on June 3rd. I think that's the last you'll hear of it.
Well, what you're also getting is you're getting parties that don't have a lot of infrastructure to pay for, trying to bring in massive amounts of donations. And when you're running essentially what is a nonprofit organization, the only way of getting rid of that money is either spending on infrastructure campaign materials or paying yourself out. So always be suspicious of a party that seems to have a lot of money laying around or wants a lot of money, yet doesn't really have anything to spend it on. And so far, the Ontario Party has no evidence that they have anything to really spend donation money on, other than maybe a few paper candidates who don't really seem particularly serious or competent.
So one of the things I'm gonna do one statement to sort of this, and then ask a question to Jim. When you said it's fascinating, the Doug Ford Justin Trudeau alliance, it's just absolutely fascinating. He was the when Andrew Scheer was running, he was the #1 villain, the #1 punching bag of Justin Trudeau, that even Scheer distanced himself from Ford, which was a mistake. And then in the most recent election, they were the biggest allies I've ever seen. Like I was shocked that Doug Ford didn't go and endorse Justin Trudeau over Erin O'Toole at the point, but they were like totally lockstep with each other, campaigning together. And it was bizarre post-COVID that like Justin Trudeau and Doug Ford are BFFs politically. It's mind-blowing. It's borderline hilarious. So okay, the question is, what do you say to the pragmatic voter, Jim? The person who looks at the new blueprint, says, I like this, I agree with you, but if we don't vote for Doug Ford, then we're going to get Stephen Del Duca or Andrea Horvath, and then we're dealt with the Liberals or the NDP. So what's your pitch to someone like that who agrees, looks and likes it, but is holding on to that sort of pragmatist worldview?
Who is that person? Like, can you give me an example of this person? Because this is the hypothetical person that
this was me in the Andrew Scheer first PPC. So this was me voting for Andrew Scheer over Maxime Bernier in 2019. Yeah. Or 2019. Yes, this is 2019. And I do, and there was, I have talked to some people who when I do this get afraid and say, well, if we do this, we're gonna have the Liberals. And again, most people in the space you can convince them over. But what do you say to the sort of the pragmatist people who are being like, well, if we don't, then we're going to be stuck with the Liberals?
Yeah, I think those people, I mean, it could have been you in 2019. You were just a conservative voter who was embarrassed that you were voting for the Conservative Party. So you're trying to give me a logical reason why you weren't switching that vote. And there's a lot of people that are going to vote for the PC Party and the Liberals and the NDP, and they're embarrassed about it. And there's a lot of people that don't like the mandates and don't like the lockdowns, and they turn themselves into a pretzel. And they're going to say, well, yeah, my grandpa voted for the PC Party, and I just can't. I feel like it's a betrayal to switch the vote. Okay, so they might vote for the PC Party again one more time. But what we're building is a party that's attracting voters that are done with the other parties. They're done. They're not voting if the New Blue's not running a candidate in their riding. That's what we're getting. And in Cambridge, we don't get this, Belinda, thanks for standing up for us, whether it's against the drug injection site, against critical race theory, against the lockdown, against voter fraud and fighting voter fraud, against Amazon shortcutting zoning bylaws and the planning process to get a facility rammed down on a neighborhood in a residential area. We're not getting, thanks for all that, but, I'm going to vote pragmatically. The pragmatic voter is something that, we like to talk about in a podcast, but when people vote, they vote on conviction and they vote on what they believe in. And our biggest challenge is not like the pragmatic voter who's not sure if they want to switch their vote. Our biggest challenge is we're running up against 2 and 3 parties, 2 especially, that are over 100 years old. And the average voter just knows PC and Liberal, and we got to get awareness up. And it's critical that we run candidates in every single riding, because not everybody lives and works and has family in the same riding. You guys know people that live in another riding. And if you see New Blue candidates in every riding, it's a serious party with 124 ridings, and people talk to each other across Ontario. And in May, when people are talking election, that's when it's going to show how many people are ready for something new.
Well, I think the major difference
I'll just say this, why you go next. With the 12 spots to fill, if someone's in the chat right now, like if someone's been inspired and wants to run, like where would I go if I want to sort of join the team and say, screw it, I'm done. We got to end the lockdowns. Bill 195. All right, let's do this. I'm in. Where do you go to get into on the team?
So if you're interested in fighting against lockdowns and mandates and people losing their jobs, and you want to boost this economy, fight for lower hydro rates, fight wind turbines, fight against critical race theory, fight against lobbyists taking over and hijacking our democracy, it's newblueontario.com. And it's right there as soon as you get there, the application to run. But I'm going to let you know, our application process is not a Mickey Mouse application process. Derek Sloan, he copied some of our questions. He put it up there just to pretend that he's got an application process too. We have a background check. There's a fee involved. There's costs. It takes up a third-party vendor's time. It takes up internal time. There are questions, there's an interview, and we've had a series of nomination races, elections, where we pick where there's more than one approved candidate who's a member of the party and has gone through the whole process, and they meet the requirements. We do nomination races. We had 2 successfully completed. We got more going on right now. We're not like the Ontario PC party. We just handpick candidates. So there's 12 ridings left, and they're in different places in Ontario. You can look them up, newblueontario.com.
I put it in the chat, by the way. So the website is just posted below. So if you're looking to go, you can just click there.
Great. Thanks.
I was just gonna say though, like what this sort of all feels like to me is that I don't know, maybe maybe it's because I'm not in Ontario, I'm going to get something wrong here, but it kind of feels like this is sort of the version of history where, because the curse of all smaller parties or alternative parties or new startup parties is it's someone who's starting a party, it's not very well organized, and it tends to be based on political purism that, oh well, they're only going to cut the taxes by 5%, I think it should be 10, so you start up a new party for that. And it was really not appealing. There's no real passion behind people just wanting a number slightly higher or whatever. But with you guys, it feels like as if Mike Harris had to start a new party to go and fight the Liberals back in the 1990s. Whereas it is simply the issues your guys are running on aren't that the PC should be doing better on this issue, or they're not quite here on this one, or I wish they would be a little bit more serious over there. It's that flat out, there's a list of common sense issues that no party's actually dealing with. And that's where I find it kind of insane that we're going into an election where a lot of people might be like, I'm just going to vote Liberal, NDP, or PC again, when there's like 5 or 6 significant issues like parental rights, which usually set the world on fire. If like a member of Congress is not standing up for parental rights in the United States, they'll get thrown out of office. Yet the entire party system in Ontario doesn't care about that issue, and nobody seems to be angry. I know a lot of people are angry, but my point is that in the media, people are not pretending like this is a big deal. But it, of course, it actually is when you actually get on the ground and talk to people.
Yeah, the people that know the story, they get it. Like the people that are aware of what's been going on in the Ontario PC party, that the Ontario PC party has been destroyed from the inside. They've destroyed the Westminster parliamentary system single-handedly, from Patrick Brown to Doug Ford in charge. The lobbyists in the back are the same. The staff's the same. There is absolutely no way to make a difference inside the Ontario PC party. They rig conventions. They've not had another executive election since 2018, and that vote was rigged. So why is that a big deal? The executive of a party basically controls the governance of how you're going to pick candidates, how you're going to pick the next leader. Back in 2016-17, they were rigging nominations with voter fraud. And now it's to the point where they don't have voter fraud because they don't have votes. They just pick their candidates. Like Doug Ford just says, here, you're the candidate. He kicks people out. He says, you can't run because this guy's my buddy. So they've got a bunch of candidates, very, very weak, really, really weak. Doug Ford told the Toronto Star he likes his team now. Because you just picked a bunch of yes people, a bunch of yes men that are going to answer to Doug, and he picked them. He handpicked the candidate in Cambridge. Can you imagine? No one in Cambridge, no PC member was able to pick the PC party candidate for Cambridge. Belinda won in a nomination to represent PC members in Cambridge, conservatives, to run for the PC party. And Doug Ford said, yeah, you're out, and I'm picking this guy. And that means that if you want to get involved and make a difference and change the narrative and fight against the lobbyist and the insider class in Ontario politics, the only option we had was to start a new party. It was either that or retire. And I'm sure they'd love it if we retired and Belinda and I went away. But thousands of people want another option. And, you know, the ideal scenario, like Wyatt said, the ideal scenario is you fight these battles within a political party. But there is no political party. The PC party is not a political party. It's Doug Ford and a bunch of people in caucus and some lobbyists in the back. They pick the candidates. They're registered elections Ontario. There's no votes. Nothing's going on the ground. They don't have riding meetings. They don't have votes. They don't have policy. They got nothing. So it's the New Blue Party. And we've got to, it's not a revolution. We're trying to fight off the guys who've bastardized democracy and have destroyed it, and reconfigure things here in Ontario to say that's not how democracy operates.
Well, as the thing too is that it's not even good for the PC party to be doing this. It's not like they're doing something out of expedience, and this is going to make the party grow faster, and we're going to be so much more popular if we just gut the governance, we get rid of all the local riding races. Because I think a lot of people, when they sort of are woken up to the issue, are really disgusted that the local candidate, as sort of we know it, is dead. There's no such thing as a guy in your community who's a great person, a great businessman, and he runs for the nomination, wins it, and everyone's really behind him. I think that with the PC party and a lot of the other establishment parties is the fact that it's becoming less democratic. It means that they're going to run more poorly in elections because they aren't training themselves up in the democratic process. They're not running to win. They're simply declaring that they're going to go and try and win. Like, they're not really, it's almost making them rusty over time, where you guys are actually training new people who are coming into the new blue party. There's local EDAs. People are talking to each other. They're in the community. People can see the new blue candidates and poll workers. It's not just a bunch of people getting trucked out of Toronto to try and win Cambridge.
Well, if you want to force them to do it better, or you said it's not going to cost them votes, or you said it might hurt them, right? That's what you said. Like today, Andrea Horvath just booted a long-standing MPP right out of her caucus, Miller, in Hamilton East, and I think he's considered to be not as far left and not as extreme on the left as many of the other NDP MPPs over there. And she booted him. And I think there was some internal rivalry going on. I don't know. Like, we'll let the NDP sort it out. So is it going to cost her votes in Hamilton? Maybe. But it only costs you votes if there's another political option. If the three parties are the same, the PCs, the Liberals, and the NDP, and they do things the same way, and they don't care about nominations, and they don't care about representing their voters in the grassroots, then maybe it doesn't cost you any votes, right? Because no one's holding your feet to the fire. No one's holding you accountable. No one's talking about it. And when the media's in on it, and the media is not reporting this stuff, can you believe, like, we had actual voter fraud that the police in Hamilton said, yeah, PC nomination decided by voter fraud.
I have those police files from the Hamilton police. That's the most bananas story you'll ever read.
But we're talking about mainstream sources, right? Writing about this stuff, confirming there was voter fraud. And now it's like a distant dream. No one cares. And Belinda put forward that private members bill in 2019 to make it illegal to commit voter fraud in internal party race. And the PCs stuck it at committee after second reading and for a year, and then killed the bill when they reset Queen's Park, reset the legislature. They killed it. And Belinda's got no more private members bills. And no one cares. The media doesn't talk about it. And the other parties are like, oh, like nothing happened.
Yeah, the funny thing is I keep having people from the Ontario party tell me they've read your lawsuit and that you're absolutely correct about the voter fraud. But then they still go around calling you divisive, despite the fact that they'll acknowledge that you're literally the one that's being forced out a lot of the time.
You're going to be excited. So can I get into that, Daniel? Like,
yeah.
You sure?
There's some questions in the chat, but we can do that after. So guys, I've read your questions. They'll come up, but.
Okay. So Ontario party, right?
Yeah.
You know, what are they, like? Truth and justice, or I don't even know what their slogan is, right? It's all about holding the Bible up in the air, right? And good Christian men. Their voter fraud, 2018 convention. Have you ever heard them send an email out about that? Have you ever heard them say, that was a good bill Belinda put forward? Why won't they talk about voter fraud in internal party elections or convention or what they're going to do about it? Why won't they talk about the lobbyists and how they're running the show? I'm sure, like, maybe Derek's watching now with, chewing his nails, and he's like writing notes, and he's going to copy another one of my emails like he usually does. He copied the Doug Ford PCs, or a wing of the Justin Trudeau Liberal Party, dropped it in an email 2 days later. Long string of that stuff. But why?
I remember when Aaron O'Toole did that. One of his better days in policy is like, I'm like, oh yeah, Jim Karahalios said this last week.
Right. So I'm flattered. It's flattering.
So you're doing people's homework. You're the kid they're copying off of in class.
I'm flattered. It works, right? Like, it works. Axe the carbon tax, against critical race theory, voter fraud, bad. Not really hard work. Not really. Doesn't take a lot of analysis to come to these conclusions. But why won't Sloan's party talk about this stuff? Why doesn't Derek Sloan talk about it? Well, because kind of his team in the back was in on it. They were in on it. Derek Sloan's riding president in Hastings on the Conservative Party was part of Brian Patterson's slate, the slate of lobbyists that were taken over the Ontario PC Party at that 2018 convention. That's his riding president, his go-to man, Carlos, who when they got kicked out by O'Toole, after they had a deal with O'Toole and that federal leadership in 2020, and they did the deed for O'Toole and attacked Leslyn Lewis and suppressed her second ballot vote from the Sloan team. They spent their whole time attacking Leslyn. And when O'Toole and the progressives in the CPC had enough of them, they booted them. And Carlos wrote a letter, Mr. Carlos, who was Sloan's riding president, public letter. Wow, I've never seen such an attack on the grassroots. Except the year before, or no, 2 years before, Carlos was on Brian Patterson's executive. As a result, a slate where Patterson won because of voter fraud at 2018 convention. And then fast forward a year later, Sloan's riding president is on that executive. Belinda and me and 18 others get kicked off the Cambridge PC executive. Patterson calls a vote to kick us off. And Sloan's riding president, I get the report on the votes in favor of kicking us out. So maybe that's why they don't talk about it. Maybe they don't talk about voter fraud because they were in on it.
This is my thing when Sloan got kicked out, because Wyatt was the former president of the Derek Sloan fan club. And we were trying to be like, Wyatt, he's just a politician, pump the brakes on this. But like when he got kicked out, we reached out to, we told him we had a conversation like, Derek, okay, listen. Everyone on your staff has been contacted by Aaron O'Toole or someone and offered a deal to betray you, because this is how things work. It's politics. This is Game of Thrones, but it's Canada, so no one dies. But still, it's kind of Game of Thrones. Not everyone on your team has your best interest. And then, of course, he kept the exact same team around him, which are all longtime Conservative Party operatives. And then someone got in his ear, because he's obviously not the brightest guy, to tell him to go out to Alberta. So Derek Sloan leaves his riding. If you don't like, this is why it's frustrating that Derek Sloan has another reason, like he has an Ontario party. Oh, the irony. The man was tricked out of leaving his riding where he had a thing, and he like let his wife run there.
I saw the internal party polling. It was a tie before he left in that riding. He was at 22%, and everyone was slightly below him or slightly ahead of him.
Yeah, and then he ran away to Alberta to go fight Brad Richards or take away the SoCon vote from the PPC. But
Blake Richards.
Whatever, who cares? Brad Richards is a hockey player. So Blake Richards is just, I don't know, he's like getting out to like, you get my point. Like, why was he going out to Alberta? And then he gets the audacity to leave Ontario, go to Alberta, where he ran as an independent with this crazy plan to run 50 million independents and do that and work together instead of just join the PPC. And now he's back to run the Ontario party, which is going to fight critical race theory by voting for critical race theory. Like,
okay, so Daniel, you're really nice. Like, you're too kind to these guys, because the reality is Derek's got a law degree. He practiced for a year or two in law school, and he knows what he's doing. He's not naive. These are all done on purpose, these things. So let's review the history. They find this guy out of nowhere. He runs in 2019 for Scheer. Mm-hmm. Back then, no one knew this guy as a social conservative. You could see his interviews running into that 2019 campaign as the candidate for the CPC in Hastings. He's asked about the carbon tax. He's asked about the Paris Accord in interviews on the radio. He's asked about, even what he had a 12-point pro-life plan when he ran for leader. But before he ran for leader, he wouldn't even say he's pro-life. He couldn't even get it out of his mouth. And so no one knew who this guy Sloan was. And they ran him in that 2020 leadership. And the operatives needed to exploit conservative voters one more time. That's the goal, right? Get them to fork over lots of money because we got Aaron O'Toole running and he can't beat McKay on his own. So we need someone like a Sloan to bring that vote over to O'Toole. And I'm in that race. And the Sloan team plants a saboteur on my campaign. And they set me up to get me disqualified. Unthinkable to get disqualified halfway through a race. That was orchestrated with the help of the Derek Sloan campaign. For the rest of that leadership, he doesn't attack Aaron O'Toole once on the basis that why did you call for Jim Karahalios to get disqualified? Doesn't do it once in the whole race. Spends his entire time attacking Leslyn Lewis, and they're supposedly both Christian politicians, but he focuses attacks on her because he dug up her PhD thesis and she was part of eGale Canada at some point. Okay, fine. It's fair criticism. It's politics, right? You can do that. She didn't, I don't know. It depends on who you ask. If she handled those criticisms, fine. But that was all fair game for Derek Sloan. And then they pushed, and so O'Toole won, and his team congratulated. The Sloan team congratulated Aaron. and they stuck with Aaron. And then they asked Christians and conservatives one more time, fork over lots of money to the CPC convention, millions of dollars to the CPC. 5,500 people went to that convention. And then they dispatched Sloan after 5,500 people bought delegate tickets to that convention, because supposedly they were going to take over the Conservative Party of Canada National Council. But I guess while they were campaigning for it, Sloan and his operatives, they couldn't even be bothered finding candidates to run for every position on National Council. They only ran 2 or 3 or something. That's not much of a campaign. So when you say his next move was going to Alberta because he was going to start the greatest grassroots, quote, the greatest grassroots movement in Canadian history, he was going to start out of Alberta. And why did he do that? You got to ask Daniel, why did he do that? And Wyatt saw the polling. He had a better shot in Hastings. But when you run in the Alberta seat, in the safest seat for the Conservative Party of Canada, what are you doing? You're letting the CPC regain the seat in Hastings rather than Sloan winning it. And you can tell your donors, I'm in Alberta fighting, and make good, raise good money in Alberta. And even if he did really well in Alberta and got 5,000 votes, which
and here's something about that Banff Airdrie race that looking, and you don't really notice this stuff, and this is where I can kind of mea culpa on this stuff, where I'm looking at this stuff, and it's like, well, you see people working on the campaign, but everyone was a free volunteer on that campaign, despite the fact that I was told that they had maxed out the maximum amount of money that they were allowed to raise, which is something like $140,000. There was not more than $20,000 spent on that race, I can guarantee you. There was not, you don't, like, how much does a campaign sign cost? Maybe if they like printed off 1,000 of them,
neon
you could
sparkles,
maybe go to
like,
well, yeah, there was not that much money spent on it. Daniel, they were only there for 2 weeks. It was not a lot.
The guy in Canada that knows the inner workings of that campaign. Like, you know, all about that campaign is like 1,300 votes he got. What did he get? I don't know. He got like nothing. Anyway,
it was like 2,000, but whatever. Yeah, it was nothing.
Never going to win in that seat. Never. But more nefarious. Why am I saying this stuff? Because his team, the Sloan Nichols duo, the Sloan Nichols gang, and their co-conspirators of PC operatives and PC sympathizers, they've done this for a long time. This is the way they operate. Secret backroom deals that exploit conservative voters with false promises. He promised, he said, donate here. I'm starting a federal party. It's coming any minute now. It's like, right. I promise, like, the bureaucrats, nothing. Where's the party? It was never set up. The poor people across Canada who gave this guy money to start a federal party that he never started. He's never registered that part. I feel so bad for those people who donated to him because he's holding up the Bible and swearing that he's a man of God and of faith and all that stuff that certain voters want to hear, and claiming he's for integrity. And he got them to hand over money to donate to him for a federal party that he never even bothered to register. And Daniel, why I say, like, don't feel sorry for him.
I don't feel sorry for him. No.
But no, but like, you know, when you say like he got duped.
Yeah.
I fell for it, right? Because I had people telling me, poor guy, they duped him to go to Alberta. So on election night, I texted him because I'm like, the guy is going to get crushed in Alberta. And he's going to, I don't know, it's going to crush him or something. I don't know what's going to happen to this guy. Left his wife and kids for a month. So I texted him. And the New Blue board, when I told him on the next board meeting that I texted, they looked at me like, what are you doing? Who told you to text Derek Sloan? I was like, oh, okay. We know this guy is an exploiter and a deceiver. Why are you texting him? Okay, I felt bad for him. And we spoke on the phone. And I said, when you get back to Ontario, you come back to Ontario? Let's meet. Oh, yeah, for sure. And he swore up and down, I'm doing a federal party. I got the text messages. Let's meet, coffee, something. His buddy, Mike Thiessen, the Pastor Thiessen, said he's going to set up a meeting, right? He's going to sit me down and Sloan down and Randy down and Rick down and Rome, and we're going to all broker it. And I said, Mike, our team, we got the texts. We said, look, Jim will be there anytime, anywhere in Ontario. I will come to a meeting. The staff, the New Blue team said, Jim will be there. Belinda can only come. She's not skipping work at the legislature to go to your meeting, but any other time, fine. He sets the date in November, I think, for one meeting, end of October. Jim will be there. No one wants to go. No one else wants to go. I go, okay, Mike, me and Derek then. We'll sit down, the three of us. We'll talk about the state of the future of Canada. And we'll canceled. First meeting canceled. Next meeting next week. Okay, Jim's there, committed. In between the two meetings, Randy decides to start a fake party, supposedly. I called it out. I said, fake party. Randy's not running the election. Never going to register this party. Next meeting, canceled. And fast forward, Randy didn't run. Is not running again. Randy never started the party. So I'm sorry, like, for calling the truth, but that's what happened. So those meetings never happened.
I love it. This is my favorite part of the night.
Really?
This is better than drinking. Oh, this is better than drinking on St. Patrick's Day. I love this stuff.
Like a scotch or something. And it's really in the weeds. And I'm telling people because people are asking, they want to know the truth. We got emails yesterday. Why aren't you guys cutting a secret backroom deal with Derek Sloan? Do you know how many emails you guys got? Guys, we got flooded with emails. 11. We got 11 emails. 11 people in Ontario out of the thousands that are visiting our website every day and hundreds that are emailing us every day. 11 people want to know what the deal is with us and Sloan. So for those 11 people, I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes and we're going to put it on video and it's going to be there and you can watch, click on Daniel and Wyatt's podcast and you get, for that 11, that massive number of 11 people, I'm going to spend 15 minutes on this. Okay. Maybe a little longer. So where were we? That meeting never happened in October, right? The meeting that I said I'd have, a group of pastors stepped up in September before that October meeting. They wanted to come and talk about the new blue because they heard Jim was back out of a wheelchair fighting cancer. Okay, let's have a meeting. We brought him over to our CFO's house. Big spread, 2 hours. Gave him the inside scoop. Pastor Rock was there. Pastor Thiessen. Pastor Hildebrand's son, a couple other guys I never heard of. They brought whoever they wanted. We gave them the whole inside scoop. Here's the Constitution. Here are the riding associations are getting registered. Here's the plan. Inside scoop. They were saying stuff like, are you well enough to handle an election campaign? Well, I don't know. I was building this party while I was doing chemo, and now I'm done, and I'm walking. So I think I'm ready to go. Okay, will you have a meeting with the other guys? Yeah, any meeting you guys want. They're not going to go for it because they're not running. That meeting never happened. And then a month later, after dodging me for 3 months, Derek calls and he says, I'm leading some new party. What happened to the federal party? Oh, I don't know. We're going to do both. Oh, you're running for prime minister and premier at the same time. I'm thinking in my head. Okay, great. So why are you calling me, right? I'm thinking he's going to say something like, I desire to be like the premier and let's have a leadership or nothing. He just says, and prior to that, I had asked him, do you have, Hastings is supposedly your home turf, Derek. Do you want, we're registering riding associations. I don't want to step on your toes and your wife ran there federally. Maybe, we could discuss who do you recommend be the leader, like the president, the first president of the New Blue in Hastings. Never gets back to me. Well, I didn't need to ask because his entire supporter base in Hastings is within the New Blue. Like they just said, we're going to go with New Blue. But out of courtesy, I asked him, never got back to me. And then he called me to say he's doing this new party. And for the end of December, year-end donations, he got poor Ontarians to give him money, right, on a tax credit basis. And all of January and all of February, he got Rick Nichols revived. Rick Nichols was retiring. He was so sad. He said, if only the PC party will take me back. Rick Nichols was so upset. He got Rick Nichols to pretend to join the Ontario Party. But 3 months later, Rick Nichols was still an independent at Queen's Park. It wasn't until we blew the whistle and said Rick Nichols voted in favor of critical race theory and he's still an independent, then Rick Nichols changed his status. It wasn't until I was responding to interviews with, I think, on a podcast with Wyatt, I can't remember, but the Rebel, True North, in the Ottawa convoy, they asked me about this party, this Rick Nichols and Derek Sloan. I said, these guys aren't even running. Like Derek Sloan has said he's not running in the next election. Rick Nichols has said he's retired. He wants to be.
I've had several people on the Ontario Party campaign tell me, not to my face because it's on the phone, but tell me that he's not running. And that this is just for donation purposes, just donation gathering for whatever they're planning on doing elsewhere. And then suddenly now I'm hearing a few minutes later, now, they're saying, oh, well, he's going to run. And I'm like, no, even if he's running, is he really running? Because there's registering your name and then there's actually running.
Right. And he was asked. So look, we're past the 15 minutes. So Diana and Paul and the other 9 people that asked, please, like, I'm committing for all 11 of you who emailed and want to know why there's no deal between the New Blue and the Ontario Party that came from Alberta. This is for the 11 people. This is how much I care. We're spending like more than a minute per email, right, at this point. So, so they started. And the media asked him, Derek, are you going to run the next election? I have no plans of running the next election. That's a quote. He didn't tell his supporters that. He told the media that. But in the emails to his supporters asking for money, I'm going to fight. We're fighting. Again, we're going to create another great movement like the one he was starting federally that never happened to fight Doug Ford. He reveals in one of his emails that he's got to deal with the Stop the Sex Ed party. Now, talk about paper parties. Here's a political party that was established. They ran 3 candidates in the last election, the minimum, in order to not get deregistered. They collect donations to do some advocacy through another advocacy group called PAFE. The leader of that party doesn't campaign, doesn't run in elections, but Derek Sloan said in an email to his supporters, we're not running 124 candidates because wherever the Stop the Sex Ed paper party is going to run candidates, we're not running a candidate. Okay, so he's brokered a deal in the back with a political party, the Stop the Sex Ed party, that's run by PC operatives, that engages in PC leadership races. That's this paper party, whose leader doesn't campaign, doesn't make public appearances, doesn't put her name on the ballot. He's gone off and brokered a backroom deal, and he's admitted to his supporters he's not running 124 candidates. Okay. And he's brought Rick Nichols on.
To be fair, I think Queenie, the leader of the party, did technically run in 2018, but it was telling that she had the lowest amount of votes out of everyone that the party ran. So
that's
clearly
fine.
Was not out there on the doors.
Well, that's fine. She ran in a by-election the first time out, right? But then in 2018, in the general election, she did not run. They ran 3 candidates. She wasn't one of them. She ran a by-election before that, and she doesn't campaign. That's fine. That's fine. Good for them. They're doing whatever they want to do with the Stop the Sex Ed party. They're an advocacy group that engages in PC leaderships. They get involved in PC leaderships. Queenie has been a delegate at a PC convention. And you guys know that if they were a legit party, the PC party would not allow the leader of another party to go to convention and vote as a delegate. They're not going to let me show up at a convention and speak at the mic and vote, right? So they're
usually ban you for being a member if you're already a member of another party.
Right. You got to pay
Wyatt was at the federal Conservative Party thing, and mentioning your name would get the comments disabled. My name too. We both had names that would get get auto banned. So and this is my thing of like why I trusted you guys, because when Belinda voted against Bill 195, they burned like everything, all the infrastructure you guys had down to the ground, and not in the most transparent ways possible. So that's like, okay, clearly Doug Ford doesn't like what you guys are doing and feels like it's not a good thing in his own interest, right? When other people like decide they're going to run a new party or they're going to do this, but they're still getting government money, I go, yeah, probably not a threat to the Conservative Party.
Right. The New Blue Party, we're against secret backroom deals. Like that's basically the premise of why we started the New Blue Party. Secret backroom deals are deciding who candidates are going to be in elections, are deciding policy, deciding everything. We're against that. So like, before we keep going, I want to thank Derek Sloan, because 2 days ago on Twitter, he just blew his mind. Like, and he just went out and he said, Jim and the New Blue Party, they won't accept my secret backroom deal to thwart democracy. Yeah, you're right, because we're not into secret backroom deals. And our board met after you sent us the proposal for a backroom deal to exploit conservative voters. And they said, we're not into that. We don't want to negotiate on a secret backroom deal with Derek Sloan, because that's how he operates. That's his existence. That's how him and his team have operated and everything they've done. So it's painful for these 11 people that emailed us, and 5 of them, I think, are with Derek. So for 5 of them, the other 6 are writing emails saying, does this guy think like we don't get it? Like this guy, Derek Sloan, think we don't get it? And it's a shame for the other 6 or the other 5 that they're not seeing it, but we're going to explain it to them, because I feel really bad that they're sending this guy money and they haven't been able to put the pieces together.
Have they even registered a donation over $200 yet? Because I believe you have to report those as you go.
Let's not underestimate it, right? Like he's raising money. Like at the end of December, for the end of the calendar year, I think he raised over $100,000. I think I saw in Queen's Park today, or one of those internal things. He raised over $100,000. 100,000 from people in Ontario at the worst time in Ontario's history is raising that money for a party that has no members, has no riding associations, for a leader that's not even running in the next election, for an MPP, Rick Nichols, who said he was retiring and only came out to say he's going to run again. You know when he came out to say that? When we announced that the first application deadline had finished for the New Blue, and we had finished all our interviews, and we announced that we had almost 200 applicants, and they knew that we had people interested in running in Chatham. 2 days after we made it public that the Chatham, no, it was the same day, I think, we released our second deadline, and we took Chatham off the list, Rick Nichols riding, which showed you that we had a candidate there. Great candidate. She signed up. Rhonda signed up. She's ready to go. She's fantastic. She's amazing. And then Rick comes out and goes, I'm running again. So they could say, oh, look, the New Blue Party's running. So, no, we're not running against Rick Nichols. He was retiring. He was done. What did they think we were going to do? Sit around like Randy wanted us to do? Sit around, do nothing for a year while these guys sorted it out so that we could roll around into April and not have anything set up? You said you're retiring, Rick. It's time to get out of the way. Lead or get out of the way. And you're in the way, Rick Nichols. You're not reading 6-page bills on critical race theory. You're not sure if you're running again. Get out of the way. We got a candidate in Chatham, and they're running. And so they came out with Rick saying, but it's amazing. Derek still won't say he's running. He's not committed to running. So then we announced 112 candidates just 7 or 8 days ago or 9 days ago. And third round of applications for us for 12 ridings left. And not surprisingly, the next day, Derek Sloan comes out and he makes it public that he sent us a letter 7 days ago, which was the first time he'd ever contacted us in more than 3 months. It was the first time, and he's got my phone number, never called, never texted. After he knew we had over 100 candidates in place, he sent the letter and he made it public a couple days ago to say, I asked the New Blue Party for a secret backroom deal where we could sit down and exploit conservative voters and put together a scheme that would help Doug Ford and the PCs by making sure that the New Blue Party doesn't run candidates in every riding. And Derek was upset, and his 11 supporters were upset that we didn't take a secret deal. I think
and just so I can
on secret deals for 5 years.
I mean, Jim, you're right to call it a secret backroom deal. The way it's being phrased for anyone out there in public who might have been following this, I think what you're referring to is the fact that Derek Sloan's talking about cooperation, and what we want to do is cooperate with all these different parties. Right. So we'll work with New Blue and the Ontario Party and the Stop the Sex Ed and all these different parties, and we'll all decide where to run candidates, and we'll have 5 different parties in Ontario running everyone out there. And to anyone with like half a political brain, you go, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like Jim's brain is going, that's a backroom deal. And I'm with you there. But even if it's not, even if you take Derek at his word and he's totally doing this for altruistic, reasons to fight for conservative values, it's still so stupid that if you want to work together with another party, you join them under one banner. Like you need, right? People, like if you have the New Blue Party, the Ontario Party, the Stop and all these different parties, people don't know which one to really vote for. Right? You need it all under one banner, right? To then go, oh, I like New Blue. So I hear Jim, okay, that's the New Blue candidate here in Chatham or here in Cornwall or here in Don Valley West. Like that's how these things work. You can't have one party, like you can't have New Blue Don Valley West, but it's Ontario Don Valley East. And everyone's just supposed to know it's the same thing. Like that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. Like no one would know that.
You're being kind of hard on, because there are some people that get Derek's emails, right? And they don't know the history of the PC party because they got better things to do than get in the weeds on this stuff like we do. And God bless them. Like they're raising their family and working really hard. And they see this guy, Derek, and they don't know, like, oh, Derek's been at this for a while. They don't know Derek had a deal with Aaron O'Toole. They don't know that Derek was pretending to start a federal party. For all they know, this is the same party Derek was talking about starting federally, right? And he's exploiting those people. Derek Sloan is exploiting those people. They hit pay or donate on the email. They send the money and they think Derek Sloan's a virtuous man on the right path. And even people inside politics think that Derek is being played by PC operatives when he is clearly in on everything he's been doing for the
then, it doesn't matter if you're in on it or not. Like at this point, I'm convinced he knows everything that's going on. You could have started off naive. Getting to this point, you know that you've either figured out you were duped and you're just going along with it because it's a good career path at this point.
And I'm on the thing of like, even if he is duped and naive and trying to do the right thing, the thing is still stupid. What he's doing, even if it's the right thing, it's on my pointing out. It's still an idiotic idea, even if it's from a good place.
Like you don't reform Ontario through good intentions while not having any clue actually how to get things done. And that's where I'm looking at, like, that's where I think I even got a call early on where they're trying to like pitch what they're doing to me. And like the first call, I was like, that doesn't make sense. You guys should immediately just say, we're going to merge this tiny party into the New Blue Party. Then we're going to go off and do something else, because that's the only way you can come out of this without looking insane. Like, I was like, this immediately on paper smells like a scam.
Yeah.
Like,
So
even if you guys are genuine, it smells like a scam.
Can we flesh it out? Like, we're going to, like, so I got 2 emails on why, please explain to me why it's not a good idea. Diana and Paul, 2 people in Ontario. There's 14 million people, but I'm going to commit the next 15 minutes to the 2 people that emailed the New Blue Party, want to know why it's a bad idea. And I'm not going to be like, Danny, you're being a little offensive by like saying it's stupid, but like, let's walk them through it, because these people have better things to do than be political junkies like us. Okay.
Sure.
So he sets this up at the end of December. He doesn't ask, let's work together. He doesn't say, let's have a leadership. I told his buddy, Mike Thiessen, I'll have a leadership race against anyone at any time. Roman, Rick, Randy, Derek, all of them, whatever you want. You bring anyone, let's do a leadership. Let's end this speculate. No one wants to do a leadership against me. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. We're not going to have a leadership because no one wants to run a leadership against me. Okay. So you go off, you raise money for 3 months. You tell your supporters, which is what Derek's doing, he's going to fight Doug Ford in the next election. You do your first campaign event virtually in the ridings wrapping around Cambridge, right? Like, you have nowhere else to go. You're not doing it in Hastings. Your first virtual campaign event is in the ridings around Cambridge, and people in the city of Cambridge are getting the invite. That's a clear attack on Belinda to confuse people there, right? Yeah. So you're doing all that, you know, because the New Blue Party has publicly said, we've got 112 candidates and we've got 12 ridings left. You know, he knows that our 200 applicants, or 150 at the time, had paid $125 each, that they've gone through a background stage, that we've had a couple nominations, that more nominations are coming. He knows all that. And then he has the gall to tell people in public that he wants us to go into a secret room and negotiate with him and put the ridings on the map and say, yeah, okay, I'm going to go back to my grassroots members in the New Blue Party who've spent money and time for a year and a half, donating, buying memberships, getting people involved. And I'm going to say to them, President in so-and-so riding, thanks for all your work. Thanks to the candidate. But you know what? We're not going to run a candidate in this riding because Derek might run. We don't know. He might not. And he thinks I'm going to do this 2, 3, 4, 40 times. I don't know how many times. Is there no better way to destroy a new party than doing that?
That would immediately, it's essentially, if you agree to that, you would be banning yourself from the debate, because there is zero chance you can get on the debate stage if there's only 4 of you.
Who cares about the debate? I'm telling you that we've got people that have spent a year and a half of their money and their time, have signed up riding associations, are itching at the bit to campaign the next election, went through a background check and an interview and spend money on it. And this guy thinks I'm going to go after we announce them as candidates to tell them you're out because Derek's in, right? And
and I'm just listing other issues that are with that.
Yeah, you're right.
It essentially keeps you, it immediately throws a ceiling on how well you can do in the election, which is maybe 10,000 votes if you're not running everywhere.
Right. And like we said earlier, like if you don't run a candidate, you know, you have family or friends, you live in Windsor and you got a cousin who lives in Ottawa or a friend in Ottawa, and you're in Windsor and you're asking the cousin in Ottawa, is their candidate of this party? No. Oh, okay. They must be a fringe party because they're not running candidates everywhere. The cumulative impact of running 124 candidates under one party brand is there's nothing better I can do for Ontario voters than run a candidate in every riding. It helps the candidate in Windsor West. It helps Belinda in Cambridge. It's going to help me. It helps the guy running in Toronto, the woman running in Mississauga, right across the map. As soon as we cut that down to 60, 70, 80, the whole thing is a sham. And what better way to help Doug Ford and the PCs than not create a comprehensive political party? What better way to do a gut punch to the members of our party? So it's no wonder our board is not even interested in sitting down with this guy. It's like, you are a schemer and you are an exploiter of conservatives, and you've done it over and over and over again. And it's too bad that the 11 people who emailed me at the New Blue haven't seen this, that this guy didn't ask to work together in October, in November, in December, in January, in February. And it's too bad his team didn't say anything about Belinda getting barred for 90 days from Queen's Park, standing up against critical race theory. He basically pretended for a year that the New Blue Party didn't even exist, right? And he finished his deal with Erin O'Toole. He attacked Leslyn Lewis. And the minute we called them out on voting in favor of critical race theory, they got upset. And they said, I can't believe, what did he say? I can't believe that this guy, Jim, is attacking me. Because it's okay for Derek to criticize Leslyn Lewis, but it's not okay for us to call out Derek and his co-conspirators and Rick for their voting record and their public positions. That's all fair game, and his actions are all fair game. And he might like it better when he's the one doing the attacking, but when you're setting up another party and you're working for the PC party and you're an operative and trying to subvert democracy and sabotage what we're doing, I'm going to call you out on it. And when your number one premise for starting a party is education, and your friends at PAFE are telling their supporters, get ready, we're going to get a political option ready for you for June, and their whole thing is parental rights and critical race theory, and their party, the Ontario Party, is one guy at Queen's Park, Rick Nichols, and they can't even get on the same page on that vote. Like, did no one on that team think of calling Rick Nichols and saying, hey, this is like the whole point of our party, and this is what we're emailing everybody for donations for. It's kind of an important vote, so make sure you don't vote in favor of it. They couldn't, like, Derek couldn't even control one MPP, but he's going to be the premier.
Yeah, it's all beyond insane. Why it's right, and why did I trying to outline these sort of meta political stupidity of this? You're doing a good job of outlining these sort of. It's just not ethical to make these sort of backroom deals to form these.
What is something else that's not ethical too? Is that something that drives me up the wall? Is whenever I hear, and this is happening, this isn't just in the New Blue situation that in Ontario. You hear it all the time in American politics in other countries. Is that someone's being called out for being? Why are you being divisive? When it's literally just the truth. Where essentially, like, be a little bit wary of people who label things that they can't even contend are false. That it's somehow being divisive, despite the fact I've heard the most disgusting lies behind the scenes about how Jim's a terrible person. I've literally had people who've never met Jim in their lives just tell me, self-diagnose Jim and say, well, he's not mentally well. Or like, he's mean to Belinda. He's mean to Belinda.
Well, that's kind of personal, and it's unfortunate that that's politics, right? Like, they're not interested in working with us. That's why they didn't approach us to work in the New Blue. The smear campaigns against us have been like pretty nasty for 5 years. The Sloan team started with their smear tactics all the way back in 2018, before Sloan was even an MP at that PC convention when I ran for president. And they'll just say whatever they want. They'll just say, whatever they want to slander me. They'll never say it publicly because they know when you do it publicly, it might not end up too well for you. But I don't do that. I don't go after personal stuff about people. I call them on their record. And when you're telling people that Rick Nichols got kicked out of the PC party because he stood up for people who against mandates, that's totally false. Rick Nichols was giving the Ford government an A- grade in public, saying they did an excellent job. And he did not say anything for over a year when every single Ontario citizen was being coerced into taking the vaccine. He only stood up for himself, and he only got kicked out because the PC party decided that all their caucus members had to take the vaccine. So when Derek's sending emails out and saying Rick stood up for the unvaccinated, that's like that. I don't know. What do you call that? Like Rule 8 of Jordan Peterson's book, Rule 8 is tell the truth, or at least don't say a lie. It's pretty simple. It's a pretty simple, and it doesn't take too much to look at their emails. And if you're following what's going on, and say, you know what, these claims they're making, about wanting to work together, they just don't hold water. They don't hold water when you come out less than 90 days before the election and we got 112 candidates saying that, you know, we're going to stand down a bunch of candidates, and they haven't even, do they even have candidates? I don't even know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think I mean, they might got like 4 or 5 people, but like, I don't like, I click ignore now. Like I maybe why it's more in on the Derek Sloan stuff.
I saw one that was I saw one that was a little bit concerning, who was like a formerly part of a Sons of Odin organization.
Yeah, and we'll see.
Like, they obviously aren't doing background checks.
Look, I make jokes like it's not a joke. We really did get 11 emails asking about this, because the people that follow us and our members or donors, they've figured it out by now, right? Like, they know what's going on. If you follow me and Belinda for the last few years, you know what's going on, you know, and you understand it, and you could put the pieces together. Derek does have support though, right? Like, there are voters out there in Ontario who watched him go through a leadership. And when you get through a leadership and you don't get kicked out, you get a lot of coverage, right? And when people still write about that leadership, his name gets put in the articles, and he's gotten a lot of exposure. And like, for me, I feel bad that people are handing him over money, thinking that he's actually putting together a political party. And we get a few emails, like I said, and people say there's going to be a vote split. But here's what's going to happen. There's not going to be a vote split, because he's not running 124 candidates. Rick Nichols is not even going to run. Like, I don't have any evidence of this except for the patterns that I see. So I'm going to guess right now. And maybe Rick will prove me wrong. But I
think you might have just guilted them into, like, you might have just forced them into being like, oh, now we have to.
Well,
and there's a difference between running and substantially actually running. Anyone can just register the name.
But I said this about Randy. Randy's not running. And he announced, and there was an independent article saying he's running for premier. And I said he's not going to run the next election. And he didn't run. And Rick has been saying he's going to retire. And he briefly said he's running again. And I'm not convinced that he's running again. So the risk is you don't run a candidate in a certain riding, and these guys don't end up running. And now the people in that riding don't have anyone to vote for. I also don't think they're going to run very many candidates at all, whether they run themselves or not. They're going to put some candidates in Toronto and downtown London and downtown Ottawa, and maybe in a couple seats in the north, and maybe in a couple seats where the PCs feel very, very, very confident they can win. Basically seats where it's not going to do the PC party any damage. And that's the way the Stop the Sex Ed party ran their 3 candidates last election. They ran 2 candidates in downtown Toronto. And we're going to run candidates everywhere.
Yeah, and I think that's a solid prediction. They run candidates in the places that it doesn't draw any support away from battleground. They're not going to run any candidates in battleground states or battleground ridings. Right. I think that's a pretty safe.
That cuts into the money that they can pay themselves out from the party budget if they run in other places.
I'm not going to slander them. Like, I don't know who they're paying whatever. That's fine. If they have people doing honest work and they want to pay a salary. That's fine. But I just feel sorry for the people that are donating money to that party on the premise that he's going to fight Doug Ford and put a comprehensive fight, and he's going to stick to it. Don't they have to pay that money back if they don't run? No, they don't have to. No, they're running a political party, and you donate, and they have expenses, and they'll pay the expenses, and you'll get a tax credit at the end of the year, and then you can ask questions later. So if they run, more power to them. Here's the big risk of what they're doing. Aside from the fact that we've spent some time talking about this when we could have been talking about the new blueprint. So it's an effective move on their part, right? Like, it's effective. They've just consumed an hour of my time, or whatever, half hour, talking about this issue. So good for them. They get a point for that. The tragedy of what's going on here, though, and Daniel likes to make jokes, but like, let's get a little serious here, because it is serious business.
Flip to Wyatt. Do
you guys appreciate Belinda being at Queen's Park for the last 4 years, right? Oh, yeah. You appreciate it, right? And Roman's running for federal leader. Randy's not running. We'll see if Rick runs. I don't think there's any other independent, unless I'm missing someone, who's been challenging the Ford government at all, right? At Queen's Park. It's been basically Belinda with some flashes from Roman, right?
Yeah.
So now Derek is doing a virtual event in Waterloo region, Kitchener, Brant, Cambridge. He's causing confusion there. He's got a following across Ontario. He's dropping emails. And what he's doing is he's putting at risk the ability for Belinda to get reelected and for the New Blue Party to elect MPPs on June 2nd. That's what he's doing. And it'll be a real tragedy if Derek Sloan keeps this up right to June 2nd and doesn't stand down. It'll be a real tragedy if he keeps this up and we narrowly lose. Belinda narrowly loses in Cambridge and we narrowly lose in other ridings. And, you know, he likes to say, he said, I think yesterday or the day before, he's not running a candidate against Belinda. Well, that's news to me. I didn't know that. We'll see if he changes his mind. But the noise he's making in and around the Cambridge-Waterloo region riding, the backroom slander and the whisper attack that they're doing against me and Belinda is created to thwart our efforts to get Belinda reelected and get other New Blue MPPs reelected. And it would be a tragedy if on June 3rd we wake up in the morning and the entire Queen's Park is Liberal, NDP, and PCers, and there's no Belinda in there to challenge these guys, to blow the whistle on critical race theory, to challenge them on higher taxes and progressive bills. That's what really is the tragedy. And as sad as it is, people are donating, they're going to figure it out. But we might be stuck on June 3rd with a 4-year government and no opposition in there because Derek Sloan and his friends want to keep this charade up.
And if you guys can actually like win a few ridings, if you guys have solid infrastructure and you're really competing hard and you win a bunch of ridings, especially around the Cambridge area, if the Ford government loses seats and they're in a minority government scenario, it would be very likely that they would have to go along with what the New Blue Party wants. So the New Blue Party could, you know, potentially have a lot of power after this election.
Well, I'm not going to sit here and speculate the mathematical models of what might come out. I know that our ceiling is really high. If you look at the profile of people that support the New Blue, it's on a profile standpoint, if you were to take that out to 14 million people, the sky's the limit. And our biggest challenge is awareness. And we're going to get that awareness if we run 124 candidates and we run a full campaign. And we're going to stick at this for the long term and nothing's slowing us down. Look, I had a bone cancer in my leg and I'm learned to walk again. It hasn't slowed us down. This nonsense is not going to slow us down long term, but these guys might delay the eventual breakthrough of a grassroots voice at Queen's Park. That's what they might do. So Wyatt says we might win a handful of seats. Maybe we can win 20. Maybe we can win 40. I don't know what we could do. But what these guys are trying to do is slow that down because they know I'm not going to stop. They know I work harder. They know I stick to my commitments. They know me. They know when this guy does axe the carbon tax, when he runs for federal leader, when he runs for president, when he says he's going to start a political party and run 124 candidates, when Belinda says she's against critical race theory and she's taking a petition to Queen's Park, they know we're going to deliver. They know we're not going to stop, and they know we're going to work harder than them. So they're coming up with ways to slow us down. And that's the real tragedy, is if they slow us down for the next election and there's not enough opposition of the three establishment parties at Queen's Park.
Yeah, well, because you've done good as we're hitting the 2 hours. Let's shift to some New Blueprint stuff.
Yeah, sure.
So let's talk about the benefits of New Blue, not like crazy backroom deals and if you were to give people some highlights, okay, they've listened, they're into the New Blue, okay, what's the platform here? What am I voting for? We get kind of what you're voting. You're voting against critical race theory, right? I assume against the carbon tax. But what else would be in the New Blueprint that people can look forward to?
So it hasn't been released yet because we want to unveil it. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to give you guys the full unveiling here today.
I mean, just some spoilers. George R. R. Martin released, I think, a couple chapters of the new book 6 years ago. Hasn't done anything since. But maybe I'll give you you're more like Brandon Sanderson than George R. R. Martin for all my fantasy nerds because you're actually writing a thing. So
it's a comprehensive platform and it's consistent with our mission statement, our principles. And right off the top, it's not enough to say that COVID vaccine passports should be optional going forward. We're going to ban them. And there's other jurisdictions around the world that have done this, and that's the right answer. We got to get rid of these things. Doug Ford let them come in. He thinks he's going to get away with it now by saying it's optional. We're going to ban them. You can't have this optional thing, facility operators, employers saying, it's my choice if I want to do a vaccine passport. We got to get rid of these things. And these masks got to go. The fact that 4 and 5-year-old kids are going to school with masking, I don't trust the Ford PCs to stick to their commitments on this. And we got to expand early treatment for COVID-19 and find restitution, like those trucking businesses that were put out of business with the emergency orders that Doug Ford put in place. Got to get them restitution and get them back on their feet and help people who've lost educations and careers or have had educations put on hold, help them get back on their feet based on the abusive state of emergencies that Doug Ford and his friend Justin Trudeau have put in place. So that's the top priority, but we're running a comprehensive platform, and we're going to put forward a plan that grows the economy, that tackles these wind turbines to lower the hydro rates. And we've talked about how we're going to crack down on the lobbyists. We're going to crack down on internal party voter fraud and crack down on the lobbyists mingling around in internal party politics. And we're going to go after and stop critical race theory and the woke culture in our schools and get that junk out of our schools, which is it's political philosophy that they're pushing, anti-classical liberalism, anti-liberal ideas on our students and our kids. And you guys are going to love it. It's going to be crisp.
You had me at stop the windmills. I mean,
well, there you go. Maybe that's all we need to do.
Is the plan, okay, maybe you have a different plan. Is the plan for stop the windmills to show me pictures of windmills, then give me an axe, and then let me run loose in the countryside to physically stop them? Or is there something else?
No, we got to do like a serious platform. And there's a way to decommission these wind turbines. And that's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to take down those wind turbines. That's the only way to reduce hydro rates. And we're going to have to use proper legal tools to do it and reduce hydro rates to get our manufacturing sector back up and to grow Ontario's economy and tackle productivity. Productivity is a huge issue for our Ontario economy. It's not talked about anymore. It used to be talked about, our productivity gap here compared to other jurisdictions, and we've got to tackle that.
I'd assume you'd also be in favor of the Energy East pipeline and advocating from the government, because it's been kind of like a long time since there's been any substantial advocacy for that in Eastern Canada.
Drill, build pipelines and adapt, right? That was the promise in 2020 that I made. So absolutely, that's in there, and getting rid of that industrial carbon tax that Ford has. So it's going to be a comprehensive solutions to what the establishment parties are peddling, and giving Ontario voters a voice that are sick of these establishment parties.
I assume you also are against
Daniel on a windmill farm and just let him go. Make it.
And I assume you're also against the plan that was kind of in the background. I'm not sure if it actually went through or they're seriously considering it, but I don't really trust them not to bring it back. But you are indeed against forced diversity on corporate boards in Ontario.
Well, we fought that. Remember when we fought that? The Doug Ford government did a review of the Security Commission. And what was the proposal that Waleed put forward? He said he wanted the Ford government to mandate gender and race quotas for every single company that's listed on the stock market, on their board of directors and on their management teams. And there's studies out of California that show in other jurisdictions around the world where they try that, immediate plummeting of stock prices because of the costs incurred by those companies. So as soon as that report went public, we blew the whistle on that. And Belinda asked the question of the Ford government. I think Phillips was the finance minister at the time.
Yeah.
And before they decided what they were going to do with that report, we blew the whistle. And thankfully we did, because they never ended up implementing that. But even with a PC government in place, they're not only accepting and promoting the woke culture in our schools, they're trying to shift it to the corporate boardroom, which depreciates and is an attack really on the retirement savings of Ontarians who've got their RSPs invested in various stock equities.
It's really fascinating because, I mean, the sort of assumed bargain we make with the Conservative Party in Canada, and it's not a good one, but like the Liberals, it's kind of thought, okay, the Liberals will push all this stuff. The Conservatives will promise to take it away. They'll get in, they'll chicken out, but they won't push it forward. They'll just be a placeholder. And then when the Liberals get back in, they start pushing. But with the Ford government, they're pushing just as much as the Liberals, which is fascinating. And I don't understand. Like, I mean, unless there's some really malicious intent here, but it's why Doug Ford and Justin Trudeau are now best friends in campaigning together. Is Doug Ford is pushing all of the critical race theory, woke nonsense just as hard as Justin Trudeau. Now, he's not dressing up in blackface and dancing around in India while doing it, but he's doing it under the table, whereas Justin Trudeau's, on top of the table, rah-rahing. And it's fascinating that we at least, I think, thought, okay, we'll bring in the Conservatives and they'll stop pushing, right? It will stagnate for a while.
And I think outside of the elite class of some PhDs that want to still say, they're nominally conservative or something like that, we're well past, we're at the point now where we don't have to talk about it anymore, because the reality is the PCs, this is a conscious effort they're making. They want to replace their base with a liberal base. Like they They are aggressively going after Liberal voters, and they don't care if they lose Conservative voters at it. So I think this is a good way to kind of, I guess, conclude the reason why we have the New Blue Party. They don't want Conservative voters, the PC party, anymore. They don't want it. They see it as a headache. It's not in line with the philosophies that they hold. It's not in line with the business model of the lobbyists that run the party. They want to push left-wing policies, and they want left-wing voters. And they want to replace their base with the Ontario Liberal Party's base. And they're doing that. And they're showing you that. And it's some of the Conservatives that are struggling to accept it. Like, they are telling you that they want to develop and promote subsidies for electrical vehicle production and other economies or industries in the economy that are dependent on government. They are telling you that. They are telling you they want to push woke culture in our schools. So we've just got to accept it and stop fighting it, and it's over. Like, they are a progressive party, and the good news is there's millions of people in Ontario that don't like it, and they want an alternative. That's the good news, and we just have to give them the option in every single riding on June 2nd and for elections thereafter.
No, I think that's, yeah, and elections thereafter is the big key. Is there wouldn't, I think, be such a coordinated effort to, you know, undermine New Blue if there weren't all the EDAs and the boards, and because the party has an infrastructure. Like, this is a real thing. It's not you just going around making speeches about COVID restrictions here and there and rah-rahing to the, you know, the base. Like, there's an actual political party here that should be a viable alternative. And, you know, if nothing else, it might wake up the Conservatives, because, again, this is the delusion of the Conservative Party, where I think they look at all these numbers that they create for themselves and they think, oh, well, if there's no one to our right, we can just go in. If we try and be the Liberals, we can take away their supporters, which never works, because you can't market yourself as Diet Coke, because everyone wants to drink regular Coke unless you have diabetes. And you can't say, oh, you know, these Patrick Browns, I'm Diet Kathleen Wynne. And he was only going to win because Kathleen Wynne had a 14% approval rating, because it took 10 years for people to wake up to just how crazy the Liberals' policies were. And, you know, the PC party's on a suicide mission to destroy it forever. And I'm glad that you and Belinda started this, because there needs to be an actual alternative to the, you know, we need to find some sort of amalgamation of PL, NDP, or whatever you can call it, the establishment branch. Because, like, if we don't, like, again, there's no difference. The difference isn't even, oh, we're going to not do what they're doing and then not fight them. It's, no, we're going to do exactly what they're doing now. And it's Doug Ford and Justin Trudeau are now campaign buddies. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And the longer we stick at it, look, we've been at it for a year and a half. And that's a short window of time, right? When you think about political parties been around for decades, and the longer we stick to it, the better our infrastructure will get. And we'll build riding associations everywhere, and build riding associations in those last 10 ridings or so that we need people. And the more we do it and the longer we stick at it and the more word gets out, thanks to you, to Wyatt, for covering Ontario politics in the Telegraph and other independent voices. And eventually we're going to have a big breakthrough. And I don't predict the future. I just know that we're going to work harder than everyone else, and we're going to stick to it, and we stick to our commitments, and we're going to break through.
Yeah, and it's good to have automatic trust, because I think people kind of confuse campaign infrastructure with social media. You can get a lot of mileage out of social media, but you guys don't primarily focus on social media. You have stuff up on your Facebook page for people to go and find, but you're not, you know, dumping money into Twitter and Facebook because you just want to be popular, spread out all over Ontario. You're actually popular in very specific ridings where there's a substantial portion of that riding, if not getting close to a majority of that riding, who likes the New Blue Party, and that's exactly what happened in sort of like the 2020 Conservative leadership race. You didn't have the sort of campaign teams full of like the typical operatives who are on the different leadership race teams, and you're not the person who has, you know, the biggest Twitter account ever, yet you raised like $300,000 very quickly, and it's because you have that on the ground trust.
Yeah, I think thank you, I appreciate it. When you're doing politics to deceive the voter, you spend a lot of your time on comms. That's what the fancy people like to call. We got to do comms, because, you know, they take hours in meetings, because fundamentally what they're doing is trying to trick their voters into like conservative voters into thinking they're providing a conservative option. When you're focusing on people and trying to build an organization, social media is important, but we're just going with what our principles and what we believe in. We don't spend all our time on social media because we are a new party, because we also believe in the grassroots effort and connecting with people and putting people in places in every riding and working with them. And so there's always room to improve in every area, and we can learn from other aspects that are better, and we're constantly getting feedback. But we're trying to do a comprehensive political party. That's the effort. That's the long-term goal.
Yeah, I think that's really awesome. I mean, I put another link to New Blue Ontario. If you guys want to look, sign up, check out the constitution's already up there, right? There's a bunch in there. And considering we're heading on 2 hours, we usually like to give the guest the last sort of closing statement to go off. And Jim, it's been great. You and Belinda, I'm sure we'll have you on again, especially in the lead up to the election. I know, you know, on the ground is better, but sometimes you got to yell at the internet. So anytime you need to yell at the internet, you can get a hold of us. So you can tell people a bit about anything you haven't said here. If you want to yell about the Leafs and their goaltending situation, or talk about why I think the Blue Jays are going to do really well this year, go ahead.
Well, look, thanks guys for having me on, and yeah, we're going to do it again. And you know, I'd like to thank Wyatt and Dan for having us on, and I'd like to thank Derek Sloan, because Derek Sloan publicly admitted that he approached the New Blue Party to broker a secret backroom deal and a scheme to deprive New Blue supporters of voting for a New Blue candidate in ridings across Ontario. And he publicly admitted and promoted our values, which is the New Blue Party is against secret backroom deals and schemes. We're for grassroots democracy, we're for transparency, and we're for integrity. So thank you, Derek Sloan, for making the case for us and promoting us. We're not for secret backroom deals, and you and your team and your crew are. So thank you, everybody. And that's it for me. The best is yet to come, guys.
All right. Thanks so much, Jim, for being here. And again, if you're wondering about his policies or anything New Blue, the link to the website's in the description. Also, I'm sure if you type New Blue into Google, DuckDuckGo, or one of the new search engines, you'll be able to find it. So thanks so much for coming. Again, thanks for what you're doing. And everyone, you can follow him and Belinda there, Twitter, Facebook. You guys know how to push buttons. Thanks for liking, sharing, being here. We'll be back next Tuesday with another episode of TNT Live at the regular time. Same bat time, same bat place. We will see you